They told you silence was strength, the ultimate act of defiance, but you've learned otherwise. Silence, when born from fear or hope, is nothing more than a shackle. You think your withdrawal creates mystery, plants regret in their heart, and makes them reflect on what they've lost. But they aren't sitting in confusion. They're sitting in comfort, knowing exactly why you're quiet. Silence doesn't puzzle those who already know your playbook. It reassures them that you're following a script they've seen before. They know your silence is pain, masquerading as power, that you're still hooked, waiting, hoping, and as long as you're silent, they don't have to face the truth. They don't even have to face you. But here's the shift. Silence without conviction is weakness. It festers like poison, eating you alive while they remain unaffected, free, oblivious to the turmoil they left behind. They don't lose sleep over your silence because they don't have to. They know your silence isn't an escape. It's a trap you've set for yourself. While you replay conversations in your head, they live their lives unbothered. They've memorized this game, and silence is just another move they expect from you. They know how long you'll hold out, and they're prepared for your eventual breaking point. They've seen it all before. But what if you didn't break? What if this time, instead of retreating, you let the truth out? Not with emotion, not with a dramatic flourish, but with calm, unshakable certainty. What if you said the thing they never expected to hear? That you're done, truly, irrevocably done, that their power is gone, their game's meaningless. You see, the truth isn't something they can twist or dismiss. It's a mirror, forcing them to face what they've done and what they've lost. You don't have to shout, you don't have to beg, and you don't have to make it about them. Just state your truth, and in doing so, you take back everything they thought they controlled. This isn't about revenge, though they'll feel it like a punch. It's not about proving your worth to them, though they'll see it shine. It's about stepping out of their shadow and into your own light. Stop imagining their regret. Stop hoping your absence stings, because they're not the story anymore. You are. Declare it to yourself. I am no longer playing their game. Say it out loud if you must. Write it down if it helps. But understand this, when you speak your truth, you stop waiting for their recognition, their apology, their acknowledgement. You become something they can't predict, can't manipulate, and can't ignore. They've always relied on your silence to keep the game going. But when you shift, when you burn their script and refuse to play the part they've assigned you, you become untouchable. They won't know what to do when the person they thought they could control finally stands tall and walks away. And if they try to come back, if they test the waters to see if they still have a hold on you, let them find nothing. No room for their apologies, no space for their manipulations, no cracks for their lies to slip through. By then, you'll have built a foundation they can't shake, rooted in the truth that you're better without them. They'll call it cold. They'll call it harsh. But that's because they've mistaken your kindness for weakness for far too long. Let them sit in their confusion. Let them wonder where the person they thought they knew has gone. Because that version of you, the one who waited, who hoped, who stayed silent, is gone for good. And you owe them nothing, not even the sound of your voice. Your silence, once a prison, has become your liberation. They thought your silence was a sign of weakness, but they were wrong. The truth is, silence is only powerful when it's a choice, not a reaction. They assumed they understood you, that your quiet was a familiar pattern they could navigate, control, and exploit. But they've been playing a one-sided game, oblivious to the fact that you've outgrown their rules. You see, silence without growth is stagnation, but when paired with truth, it's transformative. And now, it's not your silence that holds power, it's what comes after. Imagine them, sitting comfortably in the throne your silence built for them. every unspoken word, every suppressed emotion, every moment you held back out of hope or fear. They used it as bricks to elevate themselves above you. They've been sitting there, unbothered, watching you from their imagined pedestal, confident in the narrative they've crafted. But here's where they miscalculated. They assumed you'd never stop building. They believed the story they wrote for you was permanent. They didn't account for your awakening. You're not the same person who retreated into silence, hoping they'd notice, hoping they'd care. You've dismantled the throne they sat on by refusing to participate in their game. They don't hold the center of your world anymore. In fact, they're not even in your orbit. You've stopped giving them free real estate in your mind, stopped replaying the what-ifs and maybes that kept you tethered. Instead, you've channeled that energy into rebuilding yourself, stronger, wiser, untouchable. They'll feel it, you know, the absence of your energy, your attention, your care. It will hit them like a wave. Not because they've suddenly developed the capacity to feel guilt or regret, but because they'll notice the shift in power. The dynamics they relied on, the cycle they repeated, no longer exists, and without that, they lose their footing. They'll scramble to regain control, reaching out with the same empty promises, the same well-rehearsed apologies. But this time, it's different. This time, you see them clearly. The beauty of your transformation is that you don't need their validation anymore. Their words, their actions, their attempts to crawl back into your life, they hold no weight. You've moved beyond the need for closure from them because you've created it for yourself. Closure doesn't come from their lips. It comes from your decision to stop seeking it. The moment you stopped waiting for them to fill the void, you filled it yourself. And that is what terrifies them. People like them thrive on control, on knowing they have an emotional hold on you. They live for the power of being the center of your thoughts, even in their absence. But when you've truly let go, when you've reclaimed your power, their influence crumbles. They become just another face in your past, a lesson learned, a chapter closed. And the best part? They can't stand it. They can't stand being irrelevant in a story they once believed revolved around them. So when they try to re-enter your life, remember this: their return isn't about you, it's about their loss. They're not coming back because they've changed or because they've realized your worth. They're coming back because they've felt the shift, the loss of control, the emptiness where your attention used to be. And when they find you unmoved, unshaken, completely beyond their reach, it will be a reckoning they never saw coming. Let them linger in the confusion. Let them wonder how you've become so untouchable. Let them try to piece together the version of you they once knew and realize that person no longer exists. This is your truth, your power, your story now. They thought they could break you, but they only strengthened you. And when they see the person you've become, the person who doesn't need their approval or their apology, they'll finally understand what it means to lose. They'll never admit it, but losing the version of you they once knew will haunt them. Not because they cared deeply, not because they've suddenly grown a conscience, but because they'll realize the power they once held is gone. You've stepped out of their shadow, and the light you now stand in blinds them. They'll feel it in the moments when their usual tricks don't work, when their apologies fall flat, when their attempts to reel you back in are met with indifference. That's when they'll begin to understand what they've lost, not you, but their control over you. You see, people like them operate in cycles. They build you up, tear you down, and then linger in the spaces they've carved out in your heart, waiting for the perfect moment to return. But the moment you choose yourself, you break that cycle. And that's something they'll never be able to handle. They don't know how to exist without the upper hand, without being the center of someone's emotional world. So when you remove yourself completely, it shakes them to their core. It's not your anger they fear, They've dealt with that before. It's not your sadness either, because they've fed off it for so long. What terrifies them is your silence. True silence, the kind that comes from peace, from finally letting go. It's the silence that isn't a tactic, but a state of being. It's the silence of someone who no longer plays their game, no longer waits for their call, no longer rewrites their story to make room for redemption. That silence speaks louder than anything you could say, and it's a sound they won't forget. Picture them trying to step back into your life. They'll test the waters first, sending small, seemingly harmless messages. How have you been? I've been thinking about you. I miss you. These are their breadcrumbs, the same ones you might have followed before. But now they lead nowhere. You don't bite, you don't engage, and for the first time they're faced with the reality of their own irrelevance. They'll push harder, maybe even become desperate, because people like them don't know how to deal with someone they can no longer control. And when they realize they've truly lost their grip on you, that's when the regret might set in. Not regret for their actions, but regret for losing their power. They'll replay their own moves, trying to figure out where they went wrong, trying to understand how you've become so untouchable. But they won't find the answer, because the change didn't happen in them. It happened in you. You stopped giving them the benefit of the doubt. You stopped romanticizing their potential and started seeing them for who they truly are. You stopped clinging to the idea of what could have been and embraced what is. And most importantly, you stopped waiting for them to fix the damage they caused and chose to heal yourself instead. That's the kind of growth they'll never be able to understand, and it's the kind of growth they'll never be able to undo. This isn't about revenge. It's not about proving a point or making them feel the pain they caused. It's about freedom. The freedom to live a life untainted by their influence. The freedom to be your truest self without their shadow looming over you. They may try to rewrite the narrative, to make themselves the victim in a story they created, but it won't matter. You've reclaimed the pen, and their chapter is already finished. Let them wonder. Let them replay every moment, every word, every action, trying to figure out how you slipped through their fingers. Let them feel the emptiness of a game they can no longer play. Because while they're stuck in the past, you're living fully in the present, building a future they'll never be a part of. And that's not just power, that's liberation. You've stepped into a new chapter of your life, one where their absence doesn't feel like a void but a blessing. For so long they held space in your mind, dictating your emotions, pulling strings they thought you'd never untangle. But now the strings are cut, the weight lifted, and the clarity you've gained is something they'll never understand. They expected you to stay stuck, replaying their words, their promises, their betrayals over and over. But you've closed that door, and this time it's locked. The thing about people like them is they thrive on patterns. They expect you to fall back into the same loops, to react in the ways you always have. They think they know you, that you're predictable, that no matter how far you pull away, you'll eventually come running back. But when you break the pattern, it disrupts everything they thought they knew. They're left standing in a maze with no exits, unable to navigate a version of you they didn't plan for. They'll test you. Oh, they'll try. They'll throw out small hooks, hoping to catch even the tiniest piece of your attention. Maybe they'll act like nothing happened, as if they can simply walk back into your life like they never left. Or maybe they'll play the victim, turning your distance into their sob story, painting themselves as the one who was wronged. But none of it will work, because you've reached a place where their tactics don't even register. It's not that you're indifferent, it's that they're irrelevant. That's the power of truly moving on. It's not about showing them you're better without them. It's about living in such a way that their presence, their opinions, their existence doesn't even cross your mind. they lose all meaning, and for someone like them, that's the ultimate defeat. They're used to being at the center of attention, even in their absence. They want to be the ghost that haunts you, the unresolved question that lingers in your mind. But when you've healed, when you've truly let go, there's no space for them anymore. And here's what they'll never admit. Your indifference terrifies them. It forces them to confront the one thing they fear most, that they're not as important as they believed. It's easy for them to feel powerful when they think they've left a permanent mark on you, when they imagine you're still caught in their web. But when you rise above, when you move forward without a glance back, it shatters the illusion they've built around themselves. Suddenly, they're not the central figure in your story. They're not even a footnote. This doesn't mean they'll stop trying. They'll reach out in ways that feel familiar, banking on nostalgia, hoping you'll remember the good times and forget the bad. They'll send messages that seem innocent, just enough to pull you into a conversation, to test if they still have access to your heart. But you'll see through it all, because the version of you they once knew, the one who might have responded, who might have hoped, who might have cared, is gone. And what's left in their place? You, the you that doesn't need their validation, their apologies, or their presence to feel whole. The you that understands closure isn't something they can give. It's something you give yourself. The you that knows real power isn't in silence or revenge, but in living fully, freely, and unapologetically on your own terms. Let them feel the emptiness of your absence. Let them replay their actions and sit with the consequences. Because while they're stuck in the games they created, you've moved on to a reality they can't touch. And that reality? It's one where you thrive, not to spite them, not to prove them wrong, but because it's who you were always meant to be. And that, above all else, is something they'll never be able to handle. They'll try to convince themselves that they still matter, that somehow they'll find a way back into your life. It's their nature, after all, to believe they hold some unshakable place in your story. They'll wonder if maybe you're just biding your time, playing a longer game, and that eventually you'll reach out. They'll tell themselves you haven't changed, that this silence is just another tactic. But deep down, they'll feel the shift. They'll sense the difference in your energy, in the way you've simply let go. That's the part they can't comprehend. To them, letting go isn't real. They've always operated in a world where people orbit around them, tied by invisible threads of longing, regret, and unfinished business. They can't fathom a version of you that's moved on because they've built their entire identity on the belief that you wouldn't. But you have. And it's not just a decision, it's a transformation. You see, letting go isn't just about removing them from your life. It's about reclaiming the pieces of yourself they tried to take. It's about rediscovering who you are outside of their influence, outside of their manipulation, outside of the person they convinced you to be. It's realizing that their absence doesn't leave a void. It creates space for something far greater, for you, for your growth, for your peace. And that peace, it's something they'll never find, not because of you, but because of them. People like them are always running, always chasing, always searching for the next person to fill the emptiness inside them. They jump from one relationship to the next, one connection to the next, hoping to find something that makes them feel whole. But it never lasts, because the problem isn't outside of them, it's within. And while they continue that endless cycle, you've broken free of it. You've stopped chasing answers, stopped replaying the past, stopped trying to make sense of their actions. Because you've realized something they never will. Their actions weren't about you. Their betrayal, their manipulation, their lies, none of it was a reflection of your worth. It was a reflection of theirs, or rather, their lack of it. And once you see that clearly, everything changes. The weight lifts, the questions stop. The silence you once used as a weapon becomes a sanctuary instead. But don't think they'll go quietly. When they feel that you've truly let go, they'll try to pull you back. They'll show up unexpectedly, reaching out with words carefully designed to hit the soft spots they think still exist. I've been thinking about you. I made a mistake. Can we talk? They'll say the things they know you wanted to hear before, hoping it's enough to reopen the door they once walked through so easily. But this time, that door is closed for good. You don't respond, not because you're angry or hurt, but because you simply don't care. Their words no longer hold power over you. Their presence, once so consuming, is now just a shadow fading into the distance. And that indifference, it's something they'll never understand. They'll mistake it for stubbornness or pride, but the truth is far simpler. You've outgrown them. You've outgrown the need to explain yourself, to seek closure, to engage in a game you never wanted to play in the first place. They'll sit with that realization, turning it over in their mind, trying to make sense of how they lost control. And maybe, just maybe, they'll finally understand that they weren't as untouchable as they thought. But by then, it won't matter, because you'll be long gone, building a life so full, so vibrant, so unapologetically yours, that they'll become nothing more than a distant memory. And that's the real victory. Not that they'll miss you, not that they'll regret losing you, but that you no longer need them to. You've found everything you were looking for, not in them, but in yourself. And that's something they'll never be able to take away. They'll spend their days crafting imaginary scenarios, trying to understand how you slipped through their grasp. They'll replay their words, their actions, their missteps, searching for the moment you changed. But what they'll never realize is that your transformation wasn't about them at all. It wasn't some reaction to their behavior or a strategy to make them notice. It was about you finally deciding to reclaim your life, your worth, your power. And that's the part they'll never understand. It wasn't them who pushed you to grow. It was you who chose to rise. For so long, they believed they were the main character in your story, the one who shaped your narrative. They thought their absence would leave you in pieces. Their silence would echo through your life. But what they didn't count on was you using that silence to rebuild, to learn, to become someone they'd no longer recognize. They assumed you'd stay in the same place, waiting, hurting, holding on. But you've moved, shifted, evolved into someone they can't even comprehend. And now, as they sit there wondering, questioning, regretting, you've already written them out of your story. Their role is over. The lessons they taught, however painful, have been learned. The wounds they left behind have healed into scars, reminders not of what they did, but of what you overcame. And while they may still be stuck in their own cycles, you've broken free, untethered and unstoppable. Here's what they won't admit. They don't miss you. They miss the control. They miss the power they felt when they knew they could affect you, manipulate you, keep you tethered to their whims. But now, that power is gone, and with it, their ability to pull you back into their chaos. You've taken the control they thrived on and turned it inward, using it to fuel your own growth, your own happiness, your own peace. They'll tell themselves it's just a phase, that eventually you'll come back. They'll hold on to the hope that the cycle isn't truly broken, that they can still find a way to pull you back in. But with every day that passes, they'll realize the truth. You're not coming back, not now, not ever. And that truth will sting in a way they're not prepared for, because for the first time, they'll have to face the emptiness they've been trying to fill with other people's energy, other people's attention, other people's love. But by then, you'll be too far gone to even notice. You're not looking back, not waiting for them to understand, not hoping for an apology or an explanation. You've moved beyond the need for any of it. Your life is no longer about proving them wrong or making them see your worth. It's about living fully, freely and unapologetically, in a way they'll never be able to match. And the best part, you don't need them to see it. You don't need them to understand what they lost or regret what they did, because their recognition, their validation, their awareness of your growth is irrelevant. What matters is that you see it, that you feel it, that you know in your heart you've become someone they could never touch again. So let them sit with their questions, their confusion, their regret. Let them wonder about the life you're living now, the happiness they'll never be a part of. Because while they're stuck looking back, you're moving forward, building a future that has no room for the games they used to play. And that, more than anything, is what they'll never be able to handle. You've risen, and they've been left behind. That's the truth they'll have to live with, and it's one they'll never escape. There will come a moment when they truly understand what they lost, not because you're actively showing them, but because they'll feel the absence of your energy in every aspect of their life. They'll look for pieces of you in others, hoping to recreate what they once took for granted. But what they'll find is that no one will ever match the depth, the care, the devotion you once gave them. They'll realize too late that you weren't like anyone else, not because of how you loved them, but because of how you gave them chances they never deserved. They'll try to fill the gap you left behind with distractions, temporary fixes, and shallow connections. But those fleeting moments won't touch the emptiness that now follows them. They'll scroll through their memories, trying to pinpoint the moment it all slipped away. They'll tell themselves they didn't care, that it doesn't matter, that life goes on. But deep down, a part of them will always wonder. And that wondering, it's not about love, it's about power. It's about how they lost it, how you took it back, how you became untouchable. The truth is, they underestimated you from the start. They saw your kindness and mistook it for weakness. They saw your forgiveness and assumed it meant they could push you further. They saw your silence and believed it meant they still had control. But what they failed to see was your strength, the resilience hiding beneath every quiet moment, every second you held back, every time you chose to rise above instead of stooping to their level. You've become something they'll never be able to handle. Free. Free from their manipulations, free from their control, free from the version of yourself that needed their approval. And that freedom, it's not just an escape, it's a transformation. You're no longer defined by what they did to you or how they made you feel. You're defined by how you chose to heal, how you chose to grow, how you chose to move forward without them. And while you rise, they'll remain stuck. Stuck in the cycles they created, stuck in the games they continue to play, stuck in the shallow existence they've built for themselves. They'll repeat the same patterns with others, trying to regain the control they lost with you. But it won't work, because what they fail to understand is that the problem isn't the people they hurt, it's them. And until they face that truth, they'll continue to chase a sense of fulfillment they'll never find. But here's the beauty of it all. You don't need to watch them struggle. You don't need to wait for them to realize the depth of their loss. You don't need to concern yourself with their regret, their confusion, their attempts to piece together a life without you. Because your story isn't about them anymore. It never really was. They were just a chapter, a plot twist, a lesson. The real story is about you, how you took back the pen, rewrote the narrative, and turned their betrayal into your breakthrough. They thought they knew you. They thought they understood how you worked, how you'd react, how you'd always be there, waiting in the wings. But the version of you they thought they knew doesn't exist anymore. You've grown beyond their reach, beyond their understanding, beyond anything they could have predicted. And that's the closure you never thought you'd have, the realization that you never needed them to change, to apologize, to come back. You only needed yourself, the strength you've always carried, to move on. Let them wonder. Let them sit with their questions, their regret, their confusion. Because while they're stuck looking back, you're living a life so full, so radiant, so entirely your own that they wouldn't even recognize it. And that more than anything is the kind of power they'll never be able to take away. You've won, not by defeating them, but by becoming someone they can no longer touch, no longer control, no longer define. You've risen, and they've been left behind. And that's where they'll stay, long after you've forgotten their name. As time goes on, they'll find themselves revisiting the memories, not because they miss you as a person, but because they miss the control they used to have. They'll scroll through moments in their mind, replaying the times you gave them grace, forgiveness, and understanding they didn't deserve. But those memories will haunt them differently now because they know they'll never have access to that version of you again. The door is closed, and what they took for granted is something they'll never find again. People like them aren't used to consequences. They thrive in cycles of manipulation and second chances, always assuming that no matter how much damage they cause, there will always be someone waiting for them on the other side. But you've shattered that illusion. You've shown them what it means to be truly left behind, to lose not just your presence, but your care, your thoughts, your energy, and that emptiness. It's something they'll feel every time they realize the difference between you and the people who come after. They'll look for pieces of you in others, but they'll never find them. Not because those people aren't enough, but because what you gave them was unique, unrepeatable. It wasn't just your love or your attention, it was the way you gave them chances, the way you saw the good in them even when they didn't deserve it, the way you stayed when most people would have walked away. That's what they'll miss. Not because they valued it, but because they can't replace it. But here's where the beauty of your growth shines the brightest. It doesn't matter anymore. You've reached a place where their thoughts, their regrets, their confusion no longer hold any weight. You're not checking to see if they miss you, not wondering if they'll ever understand what they lost, not hoping for some kind of redemption arc that makes the pain worth it. Because you've realized the only redemption you needed was your own, the decision to choose yourself, to walk away, to heal. And as you move forward, their presence fades like a shadow in the distance. You stop carrying their name in your heart, their actions in your mind, their influence in your life. The power they once held over you is gone, and in its place is something far stronger. Your independence, your clarity, your peace. They may try to resurface, to test the waters, to see if there's still a part of you they can reach. But by then they'll find nothing. Not anger, not longing, not even a trace of the person they thought they could manipulate. You've built a life so full, so vibrant, so undeniably yours that they wouldn't recognize it if they saw it. The things that once tied you to them, memories, emotions, hopes, are now the foundation of your freedom. You've turned every wound they left into a source of strength, every lesson into a stepping stone, every moment of pain into a reason to rise. And that rise? It's not about proving anything to them or anyone else. It's about proving to yourself that you were always enough. Let them wonder. Let them sit with their questions, their confusion, their regret. Because while they're stuck in a loop of what-ifs, you're living a life that doesn't even include them as a thought. That's the real power, not revenge, not validation, but complete and total freedom. And as they replay their actions, trying to understand where they went wrong, you'll be too busy building the future they'll never be a part of to even notice. You've won. Not by playing their game, but by leaving it entirely. Not by waiting for them to see your worth, but by realizing it for yourself. Not by making them regret what they did, but by choosing to move forward without carrying their weight. And in the end, that's the only story that matters, the one where you chose yourself and never looked back. They'll never truly grasp what happened, not fully. People like them rarely do. They'll keep replaying their own narrative, painting themselves as misunderstood, as the victim, as the one who deserves another chance. But their story is just noise now, a distant echo that no longer touches you. You've stepped into a silence they can't manipulate, a silence that's rooted in peace, not pain. That's what sets you apart, and that's what they'll never be able to handle. Their attempts to reach you will grow quieter, less frequent. They'll realize, little by little, that their usual tricks don't work anymore. They'll try to convince themselves it doesn't matter, that they don't care. But deep down, the realization will settle in. You've moved on, and you've done it without them. It's a truth they'll never admit out loud, but it will linger in their mind, a weight they can't shake. They'll compare every new interaction, every new connection to what they had with you, not because they loved you, but because they loved the way you made them feel about themselves. The way you gave without asking, forgave without question, stayed when most would have walked away. But now they'll feel the difference. They'll see it in the hollow connections they chase, the fleeting moments that don't hold the depth they once took for granted. They'll search for that same spark, but they'll find only shadows of what they lost. And you'll be living a life they can't even imagine, a life where their name doesn't come up, their actions don't define you, their presence is just a distant memory. You'll be surrounded by people who see your worth, who value your heart, who cherish the things they overlooked. Your days will be filled with moments they'll never witness, and your nights will be peaceful, free from the weight of their games. That's the beauty of letting go, not just of them, but of everything they represented. They thought they'd always have a hold on you, even from a distance. They thought the memories, the history, the scars would keep you tied to them forever. But what they never understood is that you weren't tied to them. You were tied to your own hope, your own vision of who they could be. And the moment you let go of that hope, the moment you stopped waiting for them to change, was the moment you set yourself free. They'll never know the strength it took to walk away. They'll never see the nights you spent piecing yourself back together, the moments of doubt you had to overcome, the courage it took to rebuild your life without them. They'll only see the results, the confidence, the peace, the lightness that comes from truly moving on. And that's all they'll ever know of this version of you, the one they can no longer touch, no longer hurt, no longer define. Let them wonder. Let them sit in their confusion, their regret, their disbelief. Because while they're stuck in the past, you're thriving in the present, building a future that doesn't include them in any way. And that's the greatest victory of all. Not just rising above, but doing so in a way that feels so natural, so effortless, that their absence isn't even a factor. You've won not by defeating them, but by choosing yourself, by creating a life where they simply don't exist. You've closed the book, burned the bridge, walked away for good. And while they'll spend their time looking back, you'll be looking forward, moving forward, living forward. That's where the real power lies, not in silence, not in revenge, but in freedom, true, unshakable freedom. And that's something they'll never be able to take from you.